Good morning. People are here at 8 in the morning for this. This is awesome. And welcome to the fourth day of the 2024 AIAA Aviation Forum. So I'm Scott Carey. I'm from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And I've been lucky enough to be able to help on the guiding coalition to help lead this with an amazing group of aviation professionals. It's my pleasure to introduce our plenary speaker, Raquel Girvin. Raquel is the Regional Administrator for the FAA, the Western Pacific region. Raquel was appointed to this position in December 2018. She serves as the Principal Executive Representative of the FAA Administrator and the Senior FAA official in the region. Western Pacific region encompasses the states of Arizona, California, Hawaii, and Nevada, and the U.S. territories of American Samoa, Guam, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. Raquel has 30 years of multidisciplinary experience in aviation. From 2013 to 2018, Raquel served as Deputy Director for Policy and Planning at FAA headquarters in Washington, D.C., where she advanced a wide-ranging portfolio of projects and cross-cutting policy issues. In 2016, she served as Senior Advisor to the Director of the FAA's Unmanned Aircraft Systems Integration Office on international issues. Raquel joined the FAA in 2007 as Manager of the FAA's Noise Division in the Office of Environment and Energy in Washington, D.C. Prior to federal service, Raquel worked in the commercial aerospace industry as an advanced design, aerodynamics, and propulsion engineer at Boeing, Southern California, and McDonnell Douglas Corporation. She also performed airfoil research at NASA Langley Research Center. Raquel holds a PhD in the interdisciplinary field of transportation science from UC Irvine. She completed her dissertation on an economic analysis of aviation noise regulations. She holds a Bachelor of Engineering degree in Mechanical Engineering from the Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Art in New York City, and a Master of Science degree in Aeronautics from George Washington University. Raquel's talk is entitled, "There's Blue Sky Over the Horizon," and we'll have a short session of Q&A at the end. I'd like to invite Raquel to the stage. Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks. Well, good morning, and thanks for your warm welcome. Thank you, Scott. On behalf of the FAA Administrator Mike Whitaker, who unfortunately was unable to join us this morning, thank you for inviting the FAA to speak to you today. I am delighted to share some highlights about the work of the FAA's 45,500 dedicated professionals, together with congressional direction the FAA received in our latest reauthorization. I really appreciate both the aviation and space communities coming together for this forum. Whether you're just starting out in your career or have a massive body of professional achievements, like the outstanding people who have been honored throughout the conference, AIAA is a great organization to help you grow and develop in your technical fields. I'm going to do a little bit of a side story here. I have a soft spot for AIAA, though I haven't attended an AIAA conference in quite some time. So ages ago, when AIAA had an annual Reno conference, and some of you may still remember that, I made a presentation that led to my big aviation industry job. So in presenting on my master's thesis on low Reynolds number airfoils, and how cool is it that I think I saw there was still a low Reynolds number session here. Anyway, I met Bob Liebeck, who some of you may know as the father of the blended wing body, and I handed him a copy of my resume, and next thing you know, he offered me a job, and a few years later, I got to work at a blended wing body, and a few years later, he actually sat on my dissertation committee. So I'm proof that the connections that you're making here can be life-changing. So anyway, that's just a side story. back to my official remarks. So the FAA has long viewed AIAA as a key partner in our important work to maintain the safest, most efficient airspace system in the world, and here we have the most crowded and complex airspace in the US. Our work depends on your expertise and ideas for making our skies safer and for safely integrating new entrants into the national airspace system. It's also great to see Ascend here as part of the forum, because one of the FAA's big challenges is to help enable a broad range of commercial space launches and transportation activities to take flight in the midst of all of the current, call it, legacy activity. So today, I'm going to talk about the FAA's top priorities and what we're doing throughout the nation, including territories such as Guam and Saipan, which I recently visited. There are 3 key priorities I'm going to cover. First, keeping aviation the safest way to travel. Second, building the aviation system of the future, which is a lot of what I'm going to be talking about. And third, creating the workforce that will make the first 2 goals possible. It's really great to see linkages between the FAA's top priorities and many of this conference's topics. So let's start with safety, FAA's North Star in aviation. Above all else, safety is our top priority and guides everything we do in regulating commercial and general aviation. The public has put their trust in the FAA to keep aviation the safest way to travel, and the world has looked to us for decades for leadership on safety issues. To maintain that trust, we seek to build upon the safety record we've collectively achieved with aviation stakeholders, including you here at the AIAA. Before describing where we're headed, it might be worth providing some perspective about how far we've come in the safety realm, especially for those of you just starting in your careers. Because when I started my professional career, it was sadly not uncommon for a major commercial aviation accident to occur in any given year. To address this issue, we partnered with industry and other stakeholders on the Commercial Aviation Safety Team, or CAST. CAST developed an integrated data-driven strategy to reduce the commercial aviation fatality risk in the US and promote new government and industry safety initiatives throughout the world. CAST's work, along with new aircraft, regulations, other activities, help create the safest transportation system in history, and we're constantly working to improve even more on this record. And we've developed similar groups to advance safety for general aviation and helicopters as well. Through CAST, government and industry work together on voluntarily sharing data that helped identify safety issues within the system. By leveraging data from across the industry, we can connect the dots and identify patterns we otherwise might not see, which helps us identify areas of risk and mitigate them before an incident occurs. So we're working to be predictive, not just preventive, when it comes to addressing risk. We're exploring the use of machine learning, which of course is a very popular topic these days, and other advanced technologies to help us more quickly identify and act on trends or outliers in the data. We also began a move to have more operators and some manufacturers develop safety management systems, or SMS, to identify and eliminate risks. SMS is a formal top-down, organization-wide approach to managing safety risks and assures the effectiveness of safety risk controls. Now, all this wouldn't be possible without a philosophy that we at the FAA call a just culture. And what does that mean? It's a culture in which people in the aviation community, recognizing our common human fallibility, are encouraged to openly talk about mistakes or errors without fear of punishment, so we can learn from them. And we've really felt that that's been very effective. This culture shift, coupled with investing in satellite-based navigation, in new safety technologies, and replacing or modernizing aging air traffic control facilities and radar systems, can further enhance safety. While these are important steps, we remain vigilant. When it comes to runway incursions, we've invested in runway safety and lighting improvements at airports, developed a new surface safety tool, what we call approach runway verification, which alerts controllers if an approaching aircraft is lined up on the wrong airport surface. And we've better addressed air traffic control fatigue in partnership with NACA, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. Now, in terms of our Boeing oversight, FAA Administrator Mike Whitaker made it clear this won't be back to business as usual for Boeing. We will continue our aggressive oversight of the company and ensure it addresses and fixes its systemic production quality issues. Now, while we're acting on our own to enhance overall aviation safety, we're also getting direction from the legislative branch. On May 16th, 2024, President Biden signed into law the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024. This authorization runs through fiscal year 2028 and communicates congressional priorities for how the agency carries out its mission to provide the safest, most efficient airspace system in the world. This legislation is broad and speaks to everything from FAA's organizational structure, ways to bolster many of the agency's oversight processes, and where to invest resources to support safety and efficiency for both conventional users and new entrants. Much of this legislation aligns with the agency's existing priorities and approaches, but tells us where Congress is most interested in seeing adjustments to resources and timelines for various activities. Each office within the FAA that is responsible for executing given provisions in the bill is taking the actions necessary to assess what's required and how best to proceed. We know Congress is watching and expects the agency to carry out the direction in the bill, and that's what we will do. There are several hundred requirements in the legislation. The bulk of those fall under the purview of the FAA's Aviation Safety Organization, followed by the Office of Airports and Air Traffic Organization. There are more than 40 rulemakings and nearly 170 congressional reports and briefings required over the life of the bill. Additionally, there are many aviation rulemaking committees, what we call ARCs, and working groups that will include external stakeholders to communicate many different perspectives. In this reauthorization, Congress gave us strong direction on safety. We're required to review several processes, including the risk model we use to determine inspection frequency at manufacturing and production facilities, how we collect, analyze, and use data, and what a future state of type certification should look like. Reauthorization also directs the FAA to advance aviation safety on other fronts. Among the requirements that the FAA is taking seriously are for us to mandate that all commercial operators in the US have a 25-hour cockpit voice recording capability, consistent with our ongoing rulemaking. Deploy surface safety equipment throughout the National Airspace System, or the NAS, which I already mentioned. Review National Transportation Safety Board recommendations related to severe turbulence. And review implementation of our compliance program, which seeks to identify safety issues that underlie deviations from standards and correct them as effectively, quickly, and efficiently as possible. All of this congressional direction, which is very thoughtful, reminds us that any problem or stress in the system should tell all of us that strong safety records don't come without continued, persistent, deliberate, focused action each hour of each day. And we really take that very, very seriously. So we cannot be lulled into thinking that past performance is a guarantee of future outcomes. It is not. Vigilance just can never take a day off. So that vigilance extends to everything we are doing to help safely build the aviation system of the future, which is so much of what this conference is about. The FAA is putting in place the regulations and policies needed to ensure the safe entry of drones, air taxis, and commercial space launch activities into the national airspace, and the renewal of supersonic passenger flights. We're also committed to making the future of aviation more environmentally sustainable. I'll start with drones, whose rapid entry into our skies has required the FAA to be forward-looking. We're in a dynamic time for drone development as we transition from close-in operations to beyond visual line of sight and unmanned aircraft system traffic management, or UTM. The FAA, in collaboration with industry, is executing operational flights, supporting industry in validating standards, and evaluating the maturation of UTM services in a real-world environment. Just 2 days ago, in a first for US aviation, the FAA has authorized commercial drone flights without visual observers within the same Dallas area airspace. Using UTM technology, Zipline International and Wing Aviation received FAA authorizations to deliver packages while keeping their drones safely separated. And this development comes on the heels as the FAA is working to release the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, or NPRM, for normalizing UAS beyond visual line of sight operations, or NUBO, which would enable drone operators to expand operations while maintaining the same high level of safety as traditional aviation without traditional air traffic services. We're on track to release that NPRM this year, following strong congressional support in the recent reauthorization. This NPRM has been designed to allow operations to scale with the size of industry. Now let's talk about advanced air mobility, or AAM, which we've been working pretty hard here at the FAA. You'll hear us talk a lot about collaboration when it comes to AAM, as it really is key to realizing a future where crewed and uncrewed aircraft of all shapes and sizes, and with varying levels of automation, including fully autonomous aircraft, will operate routinely in the national airspace, whether it be air taxis, for cargo, or medical transport. The new generation of eVTOLs and other emerging aircraft will go through the same safety-first, data-driven, process-oriented, and methodical approach as all newly certified aircraft. Our approach is to use maximum flexibility within the existing regulations to integrate advanced air mobility aircraft into the NAS. We're evaluating infrastructure, cybersecurity, and data requirements, as well as the effects of noise and other environmental considerations to support initial AAM operations. We have certification regulations in place that will allow manufacturers to achieve our safety standards in innovative ways. Work continues to finalize the operating framework with standards for pilots to operate aircraft with flying characteristics of both helicopters and airplanes. So let me note some key milestones on this journey. Nearly 2 years ago, President Biden signed the Advanced Air Mobility Coordination and Leadership Act. The Act directs a whole-of-government AAM strategy for coordinating related activities related to safety, operations, infrastructure, physical security, cybersecurity, and the government investment that is needed to mature the AAM ecosystem. This is actually where I met Scott as we were working on advanced air mobility. So we joined at the time an AAM interagency working group led by the Department of Transportation, where we're collaborating with more than 15 federal agencies on an AAM national strategy. In a reauthorization, Congress extended the working group and clarified its intended scope to cover urban and regional air mobility. In the past year, the FAA has taken major steps forward. We issued version 2.0 of the Urban Air Mobility Concept of Operations, an updated blueprint that offers a framework of operations and anticipated levels of maturity. We proposed a comprehensive rule for training and certifying pilots, which will provide certainty to pilots in the industry on what the requirements and expectations will be to operate these aircraft. And the rule is in its final stages of review, so we're excited about that. We released an implementation plan detailing the steps that the FAA and others will need to take to safely enable advanced air mobility operations in the near term. We've been conducting research and operational testing on vertiports to inform future vertiport design standards to safely accommodate the future needs of air taxis. And we established a team we call Innovate 28, which aims to establish an operational AAM ecosystem at one or more key sites in the national airspace by 2028. This will also support companies striving to begin initial AAM operations before 2028. In addition, the FAA is working to integrate AAM operations into the NAS beyond 2028. Of course, you've got to keep moving forward. We're researching AAM concepts and possible further rulemaking for scheduled and on-demand operations that may have a remote pilot or operate autonomously in all-weather operations. And in all our work, we'll continue to engage very broadly with representatives from federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial government stakeholders, partners from foreign authorities and other industries, the greater aviation community, including the public. All of these efforts will evolve as technologies mature, as we better understand the operational characteristics of these new aircraft, and as we establish standards and rules. Fortunately, Congress is supportive of this work and has directed us through reauthorization to expand research to safely integrate advanced air mobility into the NAS and to finalize rulemakings and other activities to support AAM operations, their entry into service, and the infrastructure that will support them. I've already touched briefly on autonomy as part of the aviation system of the future. Now, new products incorporating autonomy will require evaluation of operational, maintenance, airspace, air traffic environment, as well as other considerations that may complicate their safe integration into the NAS. So we've started to form cross-organizational FAA working groups, like the Autonomy Working Group, to evaluate emerging technologies to ensure safe integration in the NAS with our Aircraft Certification Service, Flight Standards Service, Air Traffic Organization, and the Office of Next Gen, all collaborating. So it's an all-of-agency effort there as well. And in reauthorization, Congress tasked the FAA to establish an unmanned and autonomous flight advisory committee to advise us as we advance our work. It also tasks the FAA to establish a comprehensive plan for integrating autonomous UAS into the NAS. So we have our work cut out for us there. Now let's move into commercial space. The FAA also has a significant role to play in ensuring the United States is a safe, vibrant, and visionary commercial space transportation industry. This industry's progress has been amazing. You've probably heard all about it in this conference. Last year, the number of licensed launches was 117, along with 7 licensed re-entry operations, which is triple the amount in just 3 years from 2020. And it just keeps progressing. So one of the things we're very, very proud of is this important fact. Throughout the entire history of commercial space, no FAA licensed launch or re-entry operation has ever resulted in a fatality or injury to a member of the public, nor has there ever been significant property damage. This is a testament to the rising industry taking our safety mission seriously. Now, to continue to scale up commercial space activities the right way, we perform rigorous safety reviews prior to issuing commercial launch licenses. We've also made significant progress toward the twin goals of minimizing air travel impacts and maximizing safety in integrating commercial space transportation in the NAS. Let me just explain what I mean by that. So not too long ago, when a company wanted to launch, we'd have to shut down the airspace in some cases for an average of 4 hours. Now, we've reduced the amount of time that aircraft must avoid launch and re-entry corridors to 2 hours on average, and in some cases, just 30 minutes. It's a huge accomplishment. We've also been able to reopen the airspace as quickly as 3 minutes after a space launch or reentry vehicle flies safely through an aircraft hazard area. What's made it possible? Our space data integration tool, which has enabled the swift action, provides strong situational awareness through its real-time vehicle traffic tracking. Since 2021, more than 70% of commercial space operations in our airspace have sent us data for this tool. And without a doubt, we expect the number of commercial space launches to rise significantly, and we intend to be up to the challenge. Another development on the horizon is the potential return of supersonic passenger airplanes to the national airspace. We support the development of supersonic aircraft through research and international standards development, and by working with manufacturers to conduct flight tests through this process of special flight authorizations. The FAA works across multiple agencies, such as NASA and ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, to support aircraft certification to ensure this critical work is well coordinated and comprehensive. FAA supersonic research is conducted through our Ascent Center of Excellence, where we're funding a project supporting the supersonic aircraft en route low boom standard being developed in ICAO's Committee on Aviation Environmental Protection, or CAPE. We're also funding advanced modeling tools development to reduce supersonic aircraft engine noise. And believe me, as somebody who's in the world that has to deal with community noise concerns, this is really important. The FAA is supporting the international aviation community with our work in ICAO towards establishing a new supersonic aircraft noise certification standard for takeoff and landing at airports. The FAA is also working through ICAO to address the en route portion of supersonic flights to effectively minimize and regulate sonic booms. Data collected during the NASA X-59 Quiet Supersonic Research Program will inform this effort. The FAA is receiving requests from manufacturers to test their supersonic aircraft under development. Flying these aircraft over the US currently requires a waiver from the rule prohibiting supersonic flight over land in the US. And we recently granted a special flight authorization to Boom to fly their XB-1 supersonic demonstrator aircraft in the existing military supersonic corridor over Edwards Air Force Base in California. Reauthorization also touches on supersonic and hypersonic flight, directing the FAA to develop procedures for developmental and airworthiness testing, and to ensure that such flights do not interfere with the safety of other aircraft or efficient use of our national airspace. We continue to work in partnership with aircraft manufacturers currently designing and testing prototype supersonic aircraft and engine technologies to identify drivers of new airworthiness requirements unique to such aircraft. Now, I mentioned earlier that the future aviation we seek to create will be one characterized by environmental sustainability. And we are already committed to bold action on this front. In 2021, the FAA published the United States Aviation Climate Action Plan, a whole-of-government approach to achieve net zero aviation sector emissions by 2050. This plan builds on individual and sector-wide commitments by the US aviation industry and highlights actions and policies to foster innovation and drive change across the entire US aviation sector. The actions identified in the plan will decrease emissions through the development of new, more efficient aircraft and engine technologies. Through the CLEAN, or Continuous Lower Energy Emissions and Noise Program, the FAA partners with the aviation industry using a cost-sharing approach to expedite integration of environmentally beneficial technologies into current and future aircraft. I'll make a plug for today's session on CLEAN at this conference and note that reauthorization adjusts the CLEAN program to ensure eligibility of both subsonic and supersonic aircraft projects. The FAA's aircraft technology research at universities around the country through our Ascent Center of Excellence complements CLEAN by working on enhanced modeling and analysis tools and testing capabilities for developing technologies to reduce aviation's environmental impacts. Our new Fueling Aviation's Sustainable Transition, or FAST, grant program focuses in part on the development of low-emission aviation technologies. And we're strongly promoting the production and use of sustainable aviation fuels. These fuels from renewable and waste feedstocks offer significant life cycle greenhouse gas emissions reductions compared to conventional jet fuel and have the potential to reduce emissions by up to 100% on a life cycle basis. The FAA is co-leading the US government's Sustainable Aviation Fuel Grant Challenge, a federal effort to expand domestic SAF production to 3 billion gallons per year by the end of the decade, in line with industry goals. And by 2050, the Grant Challenge aims to produce 35 billion gallons per year, enough to meet almost 100% of projected domestic jet fuel demand. It's also worth noting that our commitment to clean aviation fuels extends to general aviation. In response to a congressionally mandated report from the National Academies 2 years ago, we launched in partnership with industry the EAGLE initiative to eliminate leaded aviation fuels in piston engine aircraft safely by the end of 2030. This initiative is working to identify at least one unleaded fuel acceptable for safe general aviation fleet use and to minimize the safety and technical impacts associated with high-performance engines using unleaded fuels. In this transition, the FAA is committed to ensure that 100 low-lead fuel, the most common avgas today, remains available to general aviation users until fully safe, unleaded fuels are available. The FAA reauthorization bill supports the EAGLE initiative and codifies it in statute. Just one more note on reauthorization and the aviation system of the future is Congress's support for pilot programs, research and development, and tasking the FAA to establish a Center for Advanced Aviation Technologies. Now, reauthorization also demonstrates a commitment to the aviation workforce of the future, extending and expanding FAA workforce training grant programs. So if any of you are in schools and you're interested in these grants, please look for our notices of funding opportunity. And to keep the momentum going for all of the FAA's activities that I just talked about, we want to make the FAA a place of choice where aviation professionals want to build their careers. Clearly, one of our great staffing needs is to hire and train more air traffic controllers after we had significant disruptions in the process during the COVID-19 pandemic. Consistent with direction we've received in reauthorization, we're working very hard to hire more air traffic controllers from a variety of sources and to expand our capacity to support their training. We also know it'll take innovators and dreamers who bring ideas from every part of the country in ensuring we continue to have this wonderful aerospace system well into the future. Aviation has opened doors of opportunity to so many, including me. We must make sure that it continues to do so for all our citizens, no matter their background. And I hope my own experience of industry and academic work leading me to the FAA encourages talented members of this audience to consider joining our team. So if you have an interest in the FAA or know someone who does, reach out to me or any of my colleagues, and please apply for an FAA position. So as you can see, I've talked quite a bit. We've been quite busy at the FAA as we enter one of the most exciting and challenging periods in aviation history. We are very grateful for the blue skies ahead, but as we know, we must also anticipate weather rolling in at any moment. It will take the combined efforts of the entire aviation community to maintain and build upon our safety record, all while integrating dynamic new entrants and handling increased traffic in the skies. It's a challenge worthy of the skills and talents of the people in this room. So I appreciate all that you do to advance aviation progress, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks, Raquel.
That was a lot.
That was a lot. Yeah. And your role in the Western Pacific region, you have to cover all the lines of business of FAA as it relates to that region, correct?
Yeah, so I have what we call a horizontal integration role because the FAA is a very large organization. And so usually when my phone rings or I get an email, it's probably because we have a little tricky problem that we have to address. And literally it's bringing aviation safety, air traffic organization, airports office, occasionally commercial space transportation together to kind of address whatever the issue is. So yeah, it's fun, by the way.
So I've got a few questions coming in, and one that just kind of comes up pretty quickly is working in aviation for a period of time. FAA's Reauthorization Act always is, when is it going to get done and what's going to be there? Any thoughts on this year's reauthorization just as a whole? It's
Well,
5 years at least. Right?
yes, yeah. So first off, we are just absolutely thrilled to get this long-term reauthorization. For us, it's really important to have this sort of stability in terms of direction. And so we're very excited about it because much of it reinforces what we're already doing. The challenge is a little bit in terms of the broader scope and the aggressive timelines. It's not new. Every time we get a reauthorization bill, that's our challenge. We are always trying to figure out where to put our resources because, that's the world we live in. And, we do our very best to really do everything. But a lot of times, Congress is sort of wanting us to step on the accelerator a little bit in some areas, and so we're having to try to figure out how to manage all that. If I talked about a lot of these provisions, and really, Congress is very impatient, right? And rightly so, I think. Whether it's deploying ATC systems or issuing new rules, it's like, get on with it, FAA. And so we're working really hard, and occasionally, it's a challenge to get it all done in the 5-year period that we've been given.
While maintaining a 24/7, extremely safe transportation system.
Yeah, we're proud of that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we take it seriously.
Is there anything in the reauth that FAA wanted that didn't come through this time?
At this point, we're always just looking forward, and right now, one of the things that we're working with, we're hoping to work with the Congress on, is a request for funding, and that's probably no surprise, for $8 billion to take care of our aging infrastructure, more specifically our radar systems. We just have obviously making sure that we continue to have a safe airspace is depending on these radar systems, but they're all getting old. And we are very grateful that industry is supporting us in this effort, and we are just really looking forward to working with the Congress on this very important request. And I know, again, everybody's always looking for funding, but I think we have a really good kind of justification for it, and we're just hoping that as we continue to work with the Congress, that this is something that they'll be able to hand.
And that's part of the Next Gen program, right?
Well,
Good point.
It's really part of our modernizing the infrastructure. Don't get me wrong. We've really gotten a lot of help in terms of modernizing the infrastructure, whether it's from in recent bills that have been passed. But as we know, the system is expensive, and being able to continue to maintain them and get the performance that we need from them is becoming increasingly hard. So,
Is there anything from your recent trip out in the Pacific that kind of relates to this?
Yes. So I would say that in places like, I would say weather is really a big sort of factor in terms of us being concerned about making sure that, you know, you refer to our 24/7 services. And Saipan actually had a typhoon in 2018, Typhoon Yutu, that really devastated the island and devastated our own facilities. And so I was just there and I visited our mobile tower, which has been there. It was a temporary tower, and it's been there since 2018. So it's been around for 6 years, and you know, we're again working hard to get our tower back into shape so that folks can start working there safely. But yeah, that's I would say that the weather is another factor that we have to take into consideration in terms of our infrastructure, and just making sure that we have a resilient infrastructure that can pretty much handle whatever comes our way.
So you don't want to keep the trailer that's stacked on top of a shipping container that's tied to all of your infrastructure as the permanent solution?
No. We are very thankful to the controls who have been working in that temporary facility for a long time. And not a complaint. I visited them, talked to them, and no, they're dedicated. You know, they want to deliver the services. It doesn't matter. I mean, fortunately, even though it's a trailer, they have all of the feeds from all of our equipment, so it's very safe, and they're managing it beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have a few some more questions from the audience, and some of these maybe not be where you spend your time.
In which case, I may not be able to answer them.
Okay, let's just start with that. So let's start with this. What's your opinion on AI-enabled technologies within aviation?
Well, as I noted, we are, you know, obviously, we can't live, you know, hide under a rock, right? So there is so much going on in that area, and we are looking into it. Rightly, as you say, I myself have not been involved specifically in that, but machine learning and artificial intelligence, that's just a given that we're going to be, you know, having to incorporate that. But FAA is very safety focused, and I don't think we're ever going to implement something that doesn't go through a rigorous kind of safety. I would say we'd have to do something similar to what we do with any change that we input into the system through our safety risk management process.
Right.
You know, any change introduces a new sort of risk, right? And so that's what we're always trying to do, is whenever we are developing new tools, that's also part of it.
Okay. This is a long, I need to read this again just to make sure I understand it. Certification process for aviation technologies, is that something you feel comfortable?
Well, it's not an area that I work in. I can certainly, I'll listen to the question, sure. And let's see.
What are current FAA initiatives to make the certification process more efficient and simpler?
So I know that we have believe us, I mean, we hear this all the time, and we are working on it. I know that Mosaic, for example, is something that we are working on for general aviation. You know, one of the things that we've been trying to move towards, and I think we're progressing in that direction certainly, is this risk-based approach, right? So the less risk, in theory, and certainly that's what we're trying to do in practice, is it's just simpler to get you going, up and running. But as, you know, let's just say the autonomous aircraft, you know, there's just a lot more risk, especially if you're talking about transporting a lot of people. And so, of course, that'll be a little bit more complicated. So I think that's what we're headed. You know, if you haven't seen a briefing from the FAA in terms of our risk-based approach to certifying new aircraft, we literally have this curve that says, you know, you have low risk here, so kind of fewer requirements and simpler process. And the minute you start in a high risk, then just things get a little bit more complicated, and I think rightly so. Yeah, I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you. Trying to look through and see others here. Any updates on, you gave a start of like an overview on NextGen. Any updates, more updates on NextGen airspace development and to further accelerate that program?
So if you're talking about modernizing the airspace, we are constantly working on ways to modernize the airspace. It's a really big system, and a lot of what we have to do, there's just so many steps to it. It's not just like you hand us a new technology and we're good to go, right? It's a technology that we have to train our controllers on. We have to make sure that whatever this new technology is kind of can integrate seamlessly into whatever else we're doing. So I would say that we're constantly heading in that direction, and I can tell you, it just doesn't stop. I mean, we're talking about modernization programs across the country, and just as we're implementing them in one part of the country, we need to work on others, and whether it's new technologies or just improving the airspace with new instrument flight procedures, it just doesn't stop. I mean, so there's that sort of maybe more short-term sort of things that we're doing, but there's always the far-out ideas as well. And I think as an agency, we're constantly trying to manage our resources and kind of making sure that we are following what the Congress is asking us to prioritize, whether it's in reauthorization or in appropriations. That's part of it as well. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's what
and that kind of ties into this question. So you've talked about, hey, we've got this existing massive system that has to be modernized. Now you go to the discussion of, now how do we integrate drones, urban air mobility, potentially more RAM, where you have many more aircraft or assets essentially to keep track of. Do you have any insights on how that's being approached to share?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually recently at our tech center at Atlantic City, where we are doing simulation work to sort of, in this particular case specifically with respect to advanced air mobility and the eVTOLs, because, the industry wants to operate out of already busy airspace, whether it's LAX or Dallas or, New York City, right? And you're talking about slower aircraft and, kind of merging them and working them with other aircraft like an A380, right? So it's kind of daunting, but our tech center is working. They have an amazing simulation capability in which they're simulating both the air traffic environment, air traffic control environment, as well as having pilots flying eVTOL aircraft and pilots flying, legacy aircraft like A320s and 737s, and kind of looking at, is it doable? Is it safe? And we're actually bringing air traffic controllers to actually manage the traffic and see how it does. So we're recognizing that there's great interest in that, and we want to support that, right? But how do we do it safely? So we think that the simulation capability is really going to help us figure out, we are, I think, safety is number one, and as much as we want to support this vibrant industry, if we're not going to be able to do it, at least in the short term, or if it's going to require, depending on the readiness of industry, right? Hopefully it's not going to be hundreds from the very beginning, right? So I think You probably have heard us talk about walk, crawl, run, and so hopefully we're going to start on the walk phase when it comes to integrating these aircraft into the system. But no, we're very cognizant of the challenges, and I think that we have a lot of great, smart people working on it, and maybe some of you are working on that too. And so, you know, obviously we're always looking for great ideas, and it's exciting.
Well, we're getting close to the end. Are there any other questions or any other thoughts that have come to mind before we break? And can you stick around for a couple minutes to answer, potentially talk to people?
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, I want to thank the folks here who stuck around for the whole hour. I hope that there was useful information in what I shared. You know, we appreciate what you all are doing. I mean, all the research. I mean, we just don't stop doing what you're doing because obviously we who are responsible for the safety of the system really need your support. So I think that's really all I can say. Thank you so much. Yeah. This is a great opportunity. Thanks for us being able to share what we're doing at the FAA. And yeah, happy to answer a few questions down there. Okay?
Thank you.
All righty.
Raquel, Girvin.